Indiana Jones, arguably the greatest movie hero of all time, is taking us on one last grand adventure with his fifth film, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. For the first time in the series' history, we have a new director in the chair in an 80-year-old Harrison Ford. So the question on everyone's mind now is, does this deliver a satisfying finale and the swan song that Indy deserves? That's what I aim to answer today. Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen, and movie lovers of all kind. As always, I am your host, Brett Murphy, and for today, I am going to be ranking all 5 of the Indiana Jones movies. Keep in mind, as always, that this list is subjective. It is my own personal opinion, so you may agree or you may disagree, but what's important above all else is that you let me know down in the comments below. If rankings are your thing, then I have an entire playlist dedicated to all of my ranking videos, and there are well over 100 currently on that playlist for you to enjoy, so be sure to check that out, and I guarantee you'll find something you like. And so without further ado, let's hop right into things. Number 5. Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. Look, I know and am well aware that picking on Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is very low-hanging fruit. People have been doing it for a decade and a half at this point, although more recently, like the last couple of years, and especially now since the release of Dial of the Destiny, a lot of the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull fanatics have been forcing their way out of the weeds and onto our Twitter feeds, and look, I just don't buy it. Yes, this movie absolutely still has its charms, it still has that indie feel, Spielberg is definitely still the director, and Harrison Ford is still at the top of his game. It's just everything else around the movie that is severely lacking. I think Cate Blanchett was an okay villain. Like, she wasn't bad, but she definitely wasn't the best either. She was just alright. I didn't mind the switch to them being like Russian villains instead of Nazis and stuff. That was fine by me and everything. This movie just went way too heavy into some very wonky CGI. There is definitely still some practical in here, but they stretch the realm of believability way too far and make it way too thin sometimes, like their Jeep landing on a tree and going into the river and crazy shit like that. The nuking the fridge is an infamous one. Yes, I know some people are like, oh, they tested it and people could survive. Yeah, you could survive, but you have to remember the force of that blast and the impact of hitting the ground, you not having any like safety harness or protection in there. You'd be rolling around, smacking your head off things. Your insides would be absolutely destroyed. No one is surviving that, especially a man in his like 60s. And the ending is just garbage. Don't give me any bullshit that it's a good ending, because I ain't buying it. If you think so, that's great. Keep it to yourself, because the aliens and stuff in this, it not only looks horrendous, but it's just not good. I can believe it with the Lost Ark and everything else in this series, honestly, but not this one. It doesn't work. So yes, this movie isn't a complete shit show. It's not trash. I have still watched it numerous times, and I still find a lot of enjoyment in it, but it is by far the weakest of the Indiana Jones movies. There's, again, a lot of defenders coming out recently with the Dial of Destiny, but for me, Crystal Skull is very firmly in this last place spot still by a decent margin. Number 4, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. This movie really started off strong, and I actually considered putting it in the 3rd place spot above the next one, but as the movie went on, it started to lose me a little bit. I think it's just too long for its own good. This movie clocks in slightly over 2.5 hours, and that's just way longer than it needed to be. I feel there's definitely some pacing issues here and a lot of rinse and repeat. It's essentially, without like getting into like, you know, very detaily spoilers, it just works like Indy and his crew get to where they're supposed to, get the next piece of the puzzle, the bad guys catch up, they capture them, big elaborate escape plan, they get ahead, bad guys catch them, it's just like rinse and repeat a few times, so it's very repetitious, and it does get a little tiresome by the time the movie closed, but look, it isn't all bad. James Mangold has his fingerprints all over this movie, and I love Mangold as a director. Look at 310 to Yuma, look at Logan, look at Ford v Ferrari. The man is a master of his craft, and a lot of his skill is on full display here. Harrison Ford puts the hat on and the whip in hand and does not miss a single beat. The man truly has never left Indiana Jones, and Indiana Jones has truly never left the man. Phoebe Phoebe Waller-Bridge, I didn't care for her character much in the beginning, but she did have me won over by the end, I will admit, and Teddy is no short round, but he does have enough little quirks and enough character to make me find him just lovable enough by the time the credits roll. Mads Mikkelsen is unsurprisingly a phenomenal villain. I love the dude as an actor, and he typically does his best work as a villain, and Boyd Holbrook could have had a little bit more to do, but I always find that guy has an enjoyable on-screen presence as well. This movie also uses way more practical effects than I was expecting it to, especially with an 80-something-year-old Harrison Ford. There's definitely a lot of face replacement that's very noticeable. It just looks like his face is floating on top of someone else's, or his head is floating on top of a body. That's just very clearly not his, but there's still a fair chunk of practical in here. The CGI isn't always the best, and it's pretty noticeable when it shifts to CGI, but at the end of the day, I truly do personally feel that this movie did a wonderful job at delivering that sense of adventure that Indiana Jones has become known for. It did feel like a return to form, and it felt like a satisfying swan song and finale to Indy's story. It did have a few hiccups, a few things that I didn't really like, but as an ending to this character's journey and a tipping of the hat to Harrison Ford and his time as Indy, this movie works, and I walked out of the theater feeling that things were brought to a satisfying conclusion. Number 3, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. It's odd because every time I talk about Indiana Jones, and especially when I do a ranking, I just get flooded with Temple of Doom lovers. There are a lot of people out there who have Temple of Doom as their favorite Indy movie, and that's perfectly okay. That's good for you. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm not knocking you or anything, but for me, this movie is just kind of an even split of things that are just stupendous and things that I just didn't really vibe with. The main things that I don't really care for is like the indie girl this time, because just like the Bond girls, there's always an indie girl, and I just think that this is by far the weakest one. And I also just don't care for the villain at all. Like the main villain, I didn't find him to be super intriguing, very interesting, or all that threatening, and I just don't love the whole voodoo cult thing. Like, I just never really bought into it, and it felt like it strayed too far from what I love about Indy. Nevertheless, though, Harrison Ford is in tip-top shape. It delivers on the excitement and the thrills. Ke Huy Quan as Short Round is just awesome. And the whole back half of this movie is exhilarating. I love everything in the mines, and I love everything on the bridge in the end. So although this movie does have some fairly low lows in my opinion, it also has some of the series' biggest highs too. Number 2, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. After Temple of Doom strayed from the formula a little bit in my opinion and didn't deliver everything that I was hoping for, The Last Crusade is a true return to form and the best Indy sequel if you ask me. It does right basically everything that Raiders did right. In fact, I think it actually did some things better than Raiders of the Lost Ark did. There are a few little things here and there that are a tiny bit wonky. Again, I don't find the villain to be overly compelling in this one. I did like the twist, however, with the indie girl in this movie. But the biggest selling point that this movie has, on top of just the truly incredible practical effects and stunt work, and as always that just grand sense of pure epic adventure, is the dynamic and chemistry between Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones Jr. and his father, played by Sean Connery, as Indiana Jones Sr. Their back and forth, their dynamics, their bumps in the road, and their comings together all worked magic for me and brought this movie to like within an inch, within a centimeter, depending on what system you use, of Raiders of the Lost Ark. I simply love this movie. Number 1, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Plainly and simply, this is probably the greatest adventure movie of all time, and one of the best movies ever made if you ask me. It does it. It does everything it needed to do and then some. It gave us a hero that you can root for, that's lovable, that's relatable, but that also has faults. He has flaws, and he doesn't just kick everyone's ass and save the day every time. Not everything goes according to plan. He gets beat, he gets knocked down, but he gets back up, and he has so much heart. He's got the soul, he's got the power to push through and get the mission done. This truly feels like a journey unlike any other. It has what I would argue is probably the series' best villains. And not only is it probably Harrison Ford's best work, but it's also some of Steven Spielberg's best work too. Oh, and let's not forget, it's some of the masters, John Williams' best work, giving us one of cinema's most iconic themes ever. There just aren't enough positive words in my vocabulary or the entire English dictionary to describe Raiders of the Lost Ark. So that is all for today's video, folks. Be sure to let me know down in the comments if you agree or disagree with my ranking. While you're at it, be sure to let me know how you would have ranked all 5 of the Indiana Jones movies. If you're a movie lover whatsoever, then my channel is the place to be for you. Be it rankings like this one, top 10 videos, versus videos, tier videos, I have it all and so much more, with plenty of new and exciting things on the way. And nearly 900 videos currently on the channel for you to enjoy. So if you enjoyed this particular video, then be sure to hit that thumbs up button. And if any of that sounds like it's right for you and you want to see more from me, then smash that subscribe button right now. While you're at it though, don't forget to ring that little bell icon. That way you can be notified about all of my latest uploads. And as always, folks, stay safe. Thank you oh so much for watching. And that's a wrap. Hey you, yeah you, if you made it this far, just know I appreciate you, and while you're here, consider hitting that subscribe button.